Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Eric here, all things art. So from time to time I get asked this question, Eric, if you had to go out and buy a 3D printer today, which 3D printer do you recommend? And my answer to that question is always going to be the Saturn series by ELEGOO.
This video is brought to you by ELEGOO. Today we unbox and review the Saturn III. Whether you own this printer or any other printer, the steps will guide you through the process on learning how to 3D print. Enjoy!
When it comes to 3D printing and recommending 3D printers, there's a few things that I look for. One, you want a printer that's going to be affordable. There's a lot of great printers on the market, but they can get quite expensive. With the ELEGOO, it's affordable, but it still has great features. The second thing I always look out for is the actual quality. Obviously, you want something that's going to perform well and give you good prints. The third thing I look out for is the actual customer feedback and the customer service, which in this case is why I always recommend ELEGOO over the other brands, because ELEGOO's customer service shines. It's top notch. It's the best of the best. Yes, there's other printers on the market by other manufacturers that have comparable features, maybe sometimes features that you might like better, but one of the things that pushes ELEGOO over the edge in my situation and why I recommend them is going to be the customer feedback. I frequent the collector groups, the 3D printing groups every day. I pay attention to what the people have to say, and it's not just the reviews. The reviews on any product are always going to be negative. When it comes to the internet, that's just the way it is. More people are going to post complaints online versus posting positive experiences. That's on any product on the internet. So don't ever just go by reviews. I'm going by actual customer feedback. People that are in the groups, they own the printers and they're having issues. So I was dealing with another company. I won't mention the name because this one here is just about ELEGOO and I don't want to get into other company names. But personally, I never had issues with the printers from this other company, but so many other people did. And it was to the point where when you did have an issue, and let's face it, these are machines. Sometimes things go wrong, or resin printing is quite difficult. Sometimes you might have a question and you want an answer to that question and need help setting up your printer. It's important to have good customer service. So with this other unmentioned company, it was near impossible to reach out to them and get a response, whether you just needed a replacement or you just had a general question. When it comes to ELEGOO, that's not the case. You can reach out to ELEGOO. They have excellent customer service. They will help you out no matter what the case is. So when it comes to recommendations, which printer should I pick up? Yes, there's other good companies out there that have great printers and great features, but in the end, if I really have to recommend one company that puts over the top to everybody else, it's going to be ELEGOO. They have it all. They have affordable printers. They have great customer service, and they have a great product that actually puts out fantastic looking prints. So these products right here were actually sent to me by ELEGOO, and again, I had a great customer experience with them, just talking with them back and forth with getting these products sent out to me. They wanted me to review all of these products for you guys. They sent me this great bundle right here. So we have the Saturn III. We also have the wash and cure station. And then over to my left, we have ELEGOO's detergent for cleaning your prints. I've never used this before, so I'm excited to try this out. And then we have some of ELEGOO's ABS resin. So enough with looking at the boxes. Let's get all of this unboxed and I'll give you a further up close look. And we're going to go over the actual quality and somewhat of a beginner's introduction on how to get started with resin 3D printing. But before we actually go into tearing open the boxes, I just wanted to do a quick public service announcement, if you will. When you get into resin printing, it is quite hazardous. You want to make sure you have the proper gear as well as the right environment to set up your printer. So obviously we're in my room right here. This is not where I'm going to set up my printer. I actually have a dedicated print station in my basement. It's enclosed and the air is circulated to the outside because resin is quite hazardous. You want to make sure you don't get it on your skin. You want to make sure you're wearing, gloves. You want to make sure you're wearing a ventilator mask, and you want to make sure that you have safety goggles on. Stuff is serious. You don't want to get this stuff on you, and you really don't want to be breathing it in. Not just the resin, but the post-process cleanup. Whether you're dealing with isopropyl alcohol to clean the models, and I'll show that later on in the video, or we're going to try out this detergent here, which I'm really curious to try out because I'm wondering if it has a real strong chemical smell to it. So I'm excited to try out ELEGOO's detergent for cleaning the models. But yeah, we also have the wash and cure station. I'm going to teach you how to clean your models, and we're just going to go through the whole printer setup, and I'm going to show you how to get started basically with 3D printing. But again, just keep in mind the stuff is somewhat hazardous, and you want to make sure you take the proper precaution. So with that out of the way, let's get into these boxes and take a further look at their products. Okay, so here's how the Saturn 3 looks out of the box. This is everything that comes in the box. So with this video, I'm going to assume most people watching are new to 3D printing with resin. So I'm going to keep it somewhat beginner friendly. So if you are more advanced, I apologize. Later down the road in other videos, I will definitely have more advanced videos covering, settings for software as well as the printer. This way you get excellent results with your 3D prints, but we will touch on that as well in this video. My goal for this video is to make sure by the end of the video, you will be able to 3D print something. If you're new to 3D printing with resin, my goal, like I said, is to make sure by the end of this video, you will have the knowledge to actually 3D print something. So let's get started with what comes out of the box with the Saturn 3. This cover right here, beautiful red design, is to protect the actual print enclosure itself from the light source, the sun, or any light that's coming into the room, because the way resin printing works is the resin is cured by UV light. So this case right here protects any UV from filtering through. So the case actually will sit on your printer, and I'll show you the setup in a minute, but I just want to explain what comes in the box. This right here is going to be your vat. This is where the liquid resin gets poured into. This is your attachment for the build plate here, which, by the way, the build plate is 9 inches by 5 inches by 10 inches. And I'll also throw up some diagrams from ELEGOO's website describing all of the features of everything. But you have a very nice large build plate. So you're getting 9 inches across, 5 inches going this way. So the way the build plate would sit is the build plate is going to sit on the printer like this. And then you're getting 10 inches of height. So you have a nice size build plate for whether you want to fit a whole bunch of miniatures on that build plate or a nice size large model. It accommodates everything. Another reason why I recommend this printer, it can handle small prints as well as large prints. Moving on to what else is in the box, you have your manual to guide you through the setup process, but that's what I'm going to do here myself for you guys. This is a leveling card. This is to basically level this build plate so that when it goes up and down, your build plate is going to rise up and down each time it's creating a new layer for your model. You want the build plate to be nice and tight to the screen. Not too tight, but it's basically going to level this plate right here so that it's nice and even and everything sticks nice and even. Speaking of sticking, the build plate itself, as you can see, all those black markings are an etched design, meaning it's kind of has a surface texture to it, which will help your prints stick onto the build plate, which is important because the way the machine works is it works by gravity. It rises up and down into the resin vat here. So I'm going to explain and show all of that later, but I just wanted to go through what's in the box. So that's your leveling card. I'll go through the setup of that. You also get this box with a toolkit. So inside of this is going to be another feature of this printer. This is to filter out any smells. It's basically like a HEPA filter. It's okay. Yes, it's going to get rid of the smell, of the resin, but I also recommend that you have proper ventilation in the room, especially around the printer. That's going to, pull any vapors out of, your room to the outside. But it's pretty cool. This is USB powered. It's going to sit right off to the left. And again, we'll get into setting that up in a minute. We're going to have a scraper here. This is the scrape. Let's see. Should have two scrapers inside. Let's see. We have... This one's the metal. Okay. So this is a plastic scraper. Anytime you have a failed print, you're supposed to use this plastic scraper to scrape any stuck resin off of this. I recommend not using this. Go and get like more of like a rubbery type spatula. It's called like a silicone. Like this is like almost like a hard plastic. I recommend getting a silicone spatula. It's a lot softer on the actual film because this is a plastic film on the bottom. And again, I'll show you that in a second. It's a lot more delicate and won't scratch up your film. The metal scraper right here. This is used for the actual build plate to scrape the model off once it's done printing. Again, I'll show you an example of that later. Comes with a pair of gloves, which is great. Comes with a USB drive. These are okay. They're probably cheap if it's coming for free. So I recommend that you actually go out and get a well-known USB drive. I've seen a few complaints about the ones that come with it, that they're not very reliable, and you might have problems getting the actual model to load up onto your printer. So they're fairly cheap. Just go out and buy a new USB drive here. Or if you want to try to use this, you can try to use it. But if you ever have issues getting your model to load up, it's probably the USB drive. And then it also comes with some tools. If you ever have to do any maintenance work, some Allen keys and so forth. And then it comes with the power brick to actually power the printer on, which is what we're going to do next, and take a look at the actual LCD screen. And there's the extension cable for the actual power. Looking at the printer itself, we got this nice LCD screen here, and again, we'll get it plugged in first. One of the other features, and the big feature about this printer, is its resolution. This is a 12K printer, meaning it can print in 12K quality, which is extremely high level. You're going to get really nice, highly detailed prints, very sharp quality. It's, I think, probably the highest that it goes right now. They're always improving technology, but 12K is absolutely insane when you think of the actual resolution. So let me get the build plate attached to the actual printer, and we'll take a look at the functions of how to get the printer actually set up and properly leveled with the level card. Okay, taking a look at the back of the machine, just to show you how it plugs in. It's going to plug into the back. You have your USB adapter right there. It plugs into the side of the machine, which is a little bit inconvenient. I see a lot of complaints about that. It's actually a very easy solution, and I use it on all of my machines, is guys, get yourself a USB extension cord. They sell cords, they're like 12 inches. It'll plug in and you'll run a cord and it'll end roughly around here, or however long you want the cord to be. And then this way you could just take your USB stick here and plug it in from the front if you want, something that plugs in from the front, which I recommend, because when you set up the machine, you're probably going to have your machine here, and then off to the side you might have the curing station. So to be able to go into the side here and try to plug this in every time, I admit, is a little bit of a nuisance. So just get yourself a USB extension cable, and it solves that issue. But getting back to the actual printer, so this is what the LCD screen looks like. You have your startup button. It's a push button with a click. It has your Saturn 3 by ELEGOO. Here's a look at the actual settings. So you have a tool setting, a system setting, and a print setting. Let's press on tool. Tool is going to be for, we have manual, exposure, your set, stop button, a tank clean button, and your home button, back button. So to quickly go through each one of those, Manual is basically going to allow you to adjust your build plate manually up and down. So again, this is your build plate. It's going to go up and down your axis right here, the access rod. So these are the increments. You can set them however far you want the thing to move up and down at a specific time. I always like to manually move them. So if you hit the up arrow, you're going to see it's raising that right there. You can see it spinning around with the rod, and it's slowly raising that up in the air, which I recommend. You have to raise it up in the air first. This way we can attach this build plate here to it. So that's what we're doing now. You can keep raising it up. So I'll get that attached afterwards. Let's just go through the settings real quick. Here's your back button. So your next thing on here is going to be your exposure time. This really isn't important. This is more for the test image on the model. Your exposure settings are always going to be programmed in the actual software on your computer. So don't even worry about that setting. Your set 0 is going to be to set the leveling of the build plate, which we'll do in a minute. And we have a stop feature to stop that from moving up and down, just in case it's getting too close to the screen. You have a tank clean feature, which is basically your vat right here of resin. Basically what that does is if you ever have like a failed print, instead of scraping everything out like by little chunks, you can hit the tank clean button. It shoots UV light from the bottom and basically cures the entire bottom layer, allowing you to peel the entire bottom off, which makes it a little bit easier. Basically just solidifies everything so it peels off in one piece instead of trying to scrape little pieces at a time. So really cool feature for the tank clean button. Here's your back button. You have some system settings just to change the language, service and home. So really not going to be using much of that. And then you have your actual print button, which will bring up your files. I do have the USB plugged in. So looks like we have probably some test images that you could try out, but I'm not even going to do that. We're going to print some cool objects ourselves, some cool models. I'm not even going to mess with the test images. So let's just go back and set up the actual build plate. This way we can get it attached. All right, so I raised this up nice and high in the air. This way we have some clearance between, the build plate that goes up and down and the actual screen, so we don't scratch up the screen. So make sure you raise it all the way up first, or at least make sure you have enough clearance. And then, yeah, this is going to be your build plate, again, with that etched design. And the back is just going to clip right on, or I should say slide right on, and then it gets tightened down with this screw right here. So we're going to just slide it forward. We loosen it up a little bit until it goes in. There you go. So this is going to be how you actually tighten this down every time you need to remove it. So anytime you're printing something and it's done printing, you would take this off and then you can, remove your model. So now that we have that tightened down, that's all set to go. These screws right here, or I should say these bolts with the Allen wrench key design, this is what you're going to use to level the build plate. So if you loosen them up a little bit, it actually comes like with the toolkit, this large Allen wrench right here. Might have to loosen it up by hand because it already feels a little tight. Yep. So as you can see, that just made it slide that way. So one is going to control the movement that way, and then this one's going to control the movement going back and forth. So let me just loosen up that one. And this is what we're adjusting to make sure our build plate is nice and level. So now that we got that loosened, so now it's going in all directions. So we're going to keep it nice and loose. I'm going to try to do all this with one hand. If not, I'll have to pull out the tripod. Before you level anything, you want to make sure you take off your resin vat. There's 2 screws. There's one on this side and one on the other side. So make sure you take that off, because you need to level the build plate with that off of the screen. The screen is underneath this tray here of where your resin will be going into. So let's take a look at that screen anyway, because I do want to go over the technology of the screen real quick. That's advertised on ELEGOO's website. So here is your actual vat again. So as you can see, it has a clear plastic film, which allows the UV light from under the screen here to basically flash each layer, and I'll explain inside of the actual software program how it actually works with 3D printing and how it cures each time and actually makes a model. It's actually quite fascinating. But yeah, you have your clear resin vat. It's echoing my voice right now. And yeah, that's basically what's going to hold your resin. And then this is the actual screen. You get this beautiful 12K screen with all the technology on the inside, which is going to, you know, flash evenly UV light to produce your model using UV technology. So let's go into actually leveling the build plate. So once you have the build plate, and again, this is your build plate, you want it nice and tight up here, but you want it nice and loose right here, just for leveling the build plate. We got the leveling card on there. So make sure this is very loose, otherwise you might crack your screen. That's very important. Also, please, you know, it comes with a manual. If you don't believe me, read the manual. Don't just, you know, do both. Listen to what I'm saying, but also read the manual. So make sure this is nice and tight. Make sure both of your screws here are nice and loose so it can rotate. And then you're going to go to your manual settings down here for the arrows, and you're going to slowly lower that build plate down little by little. So as you can see, it's going down. And you can lower it by different increments. The 0.10 will lower it, you know, a lot slower, and then the 1.0 drops it down a lot quicker. So for now, I'm just dropping it down quicker because we do have a significant amount of space, excuse me. So I'm just going to keep lowering it until I get close to the build plate, and then I'm going to switch to the smaller increments. This way we don't come down too fast on the screen. So I'm going to go one more. Okay, maybe, yeah, I'm going to stop right there actually. So now we're going to go with the smaller increments right here. And again, you're going to keep lowering it little by little until you can't pull. Actually, hitting the wrong button, sorry. You're going to pull. Let me switch it. So now we're on 0.10. You're going to lower it in smaller increments until you can't pull the paper. So let me do that because I need two hands to do that. I'm going to show you how to set the paper. Okay, so at this point, I have it pretty close to the screen. And then the test to level the card is basically you're going to be pulling it in each direction. As of right now, this is too loose. So you would want to tighten it down a little bit more. And again, it's too loose this way. So you're going to keep hitting those smaller increments to go down until the paper is nice and tight. So let's see, I just lowered it a little bit more. It's a little bit tighter. I'm going to go one more. Okay, at that point right there, I cannot pull this paper out from any direction. So when you're tightening the bolts, basically you want to push down on each side. You want to put some pressure on the left side, and you want to put some pressure on the front. If you have big hands like mine, try to fit it all the way around, putting pressure. As you're putting pressure, you're going to take your other hand, you know, if you're a righty, you're going to use your right hand and tighten up these screws. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then we'll move to the next step. Okay, so again, with pressure all around, make sure these screws are nice and loose while you're doing this. Once you have some nice firm pressure and you feel like you can't pull the paper either from the front or from the sides, you're going to tighten up these bolts. So we're putting down firm pressure right now, and you're going to slowly tighten these bolts up on each side. And then you can use the Allen wrench to give it just a little bit more of a tighter fit. Don't go overboard. You don't want to strip it. You just want it nice and tight. Right there. And right there. So that would be our leveling home point. Once you get it right there, that's when you want to set your home level. So now you would come back to your screen. Let's see, go back. And now here's where you want to set your 0. When it's right there and it's nice and flat to the screen, you're going to set 0. Sorry, it's not responding because I have a plastic screen still on this. It says home first, then manually adjust the Z-axis to the best position. That's what we just did. And then we're going to confirm it. Confirm, and now we're level. So now the build plate is level. You can raise it back up, put your vat back on top and screw it in, and we're all set for printing. From here, we're going to move on to setting up your model in the 3D software. You're basically going to take your USB drive, go over to your computer or laptop. We're going to load the file onto the USB drive from your computer. And then we're going to bring the USB drive back, plug it into the printer, and our model will show up on the screen and we can hit the print button. So let me show you how to set all of that up and you'll be on your way to printing. All right, so after you finish leveling your build plate on the printer, you can head over to your computer or your laptop, bring that USB drive with you because you're going to plug it in and now find a file to print. So the printer itself comes with two software programs. One I've never used before, but the other one I am familiar with. It's called Chitubox. You can also download it on the internet. I'll leave a title and description as well as a link to where you can find Chitubox. But basically, it's a 3D software program to where you can set up your model. This way it's ready to be printed. So the screen we're looking at right now is Chitubox. And if you see the rectangular shape on the screen, that's actually your build plate. It should look very familiar to what we were just looking at and that what we just leveled. So you have this build plate. The first thing you actually want to do when you get into Chitubox is program your printer. Being that we're working with the Saturn 3, that's the option you're going to want to choose. So let me show you how to set that up. The first time you open the program, it will automatically walk you through adding your printer yourself. But if not, you can go to the little check mark down below here, click on that. There's a list of all different printers here. You're going to go to ELEGOO, click on that. And then you're going to find the printer, which we're working with today, which is the ELEGOO Saturn 3. Click on that, hit next. And basically what that does is it sets up the software to where the build plate is the correct size. This way you're not placing objects in the wrong spot. So we have the resolution set. We have the size of the build plate all set. You could scroll down. It gives you, the cost of the resin, how much it might cost for the project, which sometimes it's not so accurate, so don't worry too much about that. But most importantly, it has the print settings. There's all different types of settings when you're resin 3D printing. There's exposure times, meaning basically, as I explained, with resin, it's flashing a UV light. So there's ways to program the printer for how long that light is being flashed, per layer. Also, how fast that build plate is moving up and down. You don't want the build plate going up and down too fast because then it might create too much of, a suction force and it might pull the model off. Again, everything is printing upside down by gravity. So by default, it comes with some settings already recommended for this printer. So what you see on the screen right now is default. You can also head on over to ELEGOO's website because it really depends on the type of resin you're using. Each resin is going to have different settings for the exposure, mainly the exposure time as well as the bottom layer count. So, or I should say the bottom exposure time. So basically, let me go back to the other screen real quick. So we're going to cancel out of this because I already added the printer. We're already on the Saturn 3. So let me get a model on there first, just to show you what it looks like when it's actually printing. So I have a file. It's Hawk Girl from DC Comics. So let me find that real quick. Hawk Girl. And we'll print out the portrait for this model because it's a really nice model, has a lot of nice details. It's by B3D Zerk, 100%, and we want the head. So we're going to open up this file right here. As far as files go, each month I feature new characters. So if you're looking for a specific model to work on, whether it's like Marvel or DC, you can check out my monthly videos on files that I recommend. Otherwise, you can find things to 3D print anywhere online. Just do a Google search. You're going to want to search for STL files. Those are the type of files that you're going to open inside of this 3D software program that we're looking at now. All right, so it loaded up the model. Basically, we're looking at the portrait of Hawk Girl. The blue area is obviously, the model of the actual character. And then all these gray bars on the bottom are going to be your support marks. That's what's going to allow the model to stick to this, rectangular build plate. So let me flip it around and show you how it actually prints, because the way resin 3D printing works is it prints upside down. So let me get rid of all these layers real quick, and we'll go through the process of how resin 3D printing actually works. All right, so now we're left with, excuse me, just a build plate by itself. It's letting you know the front of the build plate as well as the back. So here's your build plate. So, picture like, that's your machine. We're looking at the machine right now. And then on the bottom of this section down here would be your tray or your vat of resin. You pour in the liquid resin down below. And basically what happens is the build plate is going to slowly lower down each time into the resin. And every time it does that, the screen below is flashing a UV light, adding a new layer. So I'm going to jump ahead because it happens very slow. I'm going to jump ahead like every 200 layers. So you can see it's starting to add the supports for the model to hold the model up into the air. Again, then the machine would rise back up and then, go back down, add another layer. Again, we're just, shooting past a few layers at a time again. And the machine's going to dip up and down, back and forth. Every time the machine dips down, it's adding more layers, and it's slowly building your model that you're printing. The screen technology has lights inside the screen that mirror all throughout that spread, knowing exactly where to shoot those lights in a specific spot to exactly cure the model so that only the model is being created, which is actually quite fascinating, like I said. So it's basically growing upside down. And again, this is all done by gravity. This is why you want to make sure your model is properly supported, because if it's not supported correctly, because of gravity, it could fall off of the build plate and land in the tray of resin and, splash, make a mess, which you don't want. So once everything prints, basically that's how it would look. It would look upside down, and then you would, pull your build plate off of the off of the machine, and then scrape the model off of the build plate and clean it. And we'll get into that in a few minutes when we go into how to clean the model. But basically, I just wanted to show you how the actual 3D printing process works, because it is quite fascinating. So you can actually, this little toggle on the right here allows you to go through the different layers and look at how the model is being created. You could also shut off these supports. So if you just want to look at the model by itself, because sometimes the supports get in the way and it's kind of hard to see what's going on. So let me toggle those off. So now we're just looking at the model by itself. I'll zoom in a little bit closer so you can get a better look at what's happening as it's printing. So let's take everything off. So here's an up close look of the actual build plate. And again, it's going to start growing and creating the model. So as you can see, it's coming from all different areas. And because it does come from all different areas, this is why we have supports everywhere. If we didn't have supports, all these smaller pieces, let me zoom back out here. Say, for example, this piece right here that I'm circling, if we didn't have a support right there, it would just fall into the tray of resin and it would never stick to the build plate. So that's why we add supports to it. So if we toggle on the supports just halfway, you can see all the support markings. So now I'm going to clear the supports real quick, because I'm going to do a separate video on how to actually get into support settings, because it does get quite advanced and I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's a little bit more beginner level. But I will show you a few tricks and explain it a little bit, just so you have a little bit of an understanding of it. So let me clear everything first. So we're just going to show the model again. I'm putting all the layers back on. And excuse me, let's spin her around so we can get a better look at her. So if you go to the right, there's an option for all your different supports. We're going to clear everything because this model was already pre-supported. When you go to look for different character models, you know, STL files, they come sometimes pre-supported, which means the work is done for you, or sometimes they don't come supported. You got to do the supports yourself, and it does get time consuming. So this was already pre-supported. It's by B3D Zerk from the Wicked team. They always pre-support their models. But even though it's pre-supported, I always recommend checking each layer to make sure they didn't miss anything, because you never know. You don't want to end up with a failed print and then have to clean your entire vat of resin, which takes a long time. So I just removed all of their auto supports, and if you had to manually add your own supports, there's a few ways to go about it. Someone actually just asked me this question not too long ago, so I'm going to zoom in because when you do add supports, you want to be nice and close. So these are called islands. Basically, every time an island pops up, you want to catch it and add a support. So let me zoom out just a little bit. So the way to add supports is you would toggle through these different layers, and I'm just going to add all of them back real quick just to show you. So on this specific, just this part of the model, just the head, there's 2,270 layers, meaning this machine is going to dip down into that tank of resin 2,270 times, each time creating a new layer until it's finally done printing. It's a long process. This alone, just this head alone, could probably take about 8 hours. So again, it's a very long process, and you want to go through each one. But I will show you a quick shortcut. So basically, you want to catch these islands every time they pop up anywhere they are on the build plate. So here is the very start of the model right there. So you would want a support right there. Oh, we went too far. Let me zoom in real quick, just on that little space right there. All right, so that's where our first support would be. So there's an option down below to add a support. You would come in, go right underneath it, where the red area is. Sometimes you gotta work your way around it to get in there. All right, and we just added our first support. I'm gonna add a few more just to show you what it looks like, and then we'll zoom back out. So you would keep going. If it's growing by itself, that's fine. If any time a new area pops up and there isn't a support mark under it, you want to add a new support. So there was another little area over here that just popped up, so we want to put a support under it. Same thing, a new one's starting to pop up a little bit there, but let me just quickly go through it because I don't want to spend too much time. So that one's growing fine, but there are a few popping up over here. So especially right there, I'm going to add, see if I can get in here. You would want one right here. Sometimes you have to zoom around a little bit to get under there. But basically you want to add supports under each area, which, like I said, can get very time consuming. So let me just go through the layers. So a new one just popped up right here. You would want another support under there and so forth. Let me zoom back out and just give you a better idea of what that's looking like. So as you can see, that's just only a few support marks compared to what we just erased previously. So a trick which I like to do, since that takes a very long time, is there's a auto support feature. So let me just clear this real quick. Give the program time to clear everything. Okay, so it's been cleared. I'm going to return all the layers so we can take a look at the model. And we're going to zoom back out just a drop so we can see everything. All right, over to the right, there's an option for auto support. Now, again, I got asked this question the other day. Is it okay to use auto support? Yes, it's okay to use auto supports as long as you're still going back and checking each layer by layer, because you don't want to trust the program to catch everything for you. You want to use your own two eyes to make sure it's not missing anything. So let me just show you. You hit the auto support feature, and it's doing its thing, and it's going to pretty much go back to the way it previously looked, adding, those thousands of supports that we just saw. So it's almost done. takes a few seconds, or depending on your computer, how fast your computer is. All right, so there it goes. So now it looks back to the way it almost was earlier, to where the pre-supported model was. So there's all of our supports. So from here, you could take the model and send it, and save it and send it to the printer. What I recommend if you are going to use auto supports is the same thing I just showed you previously. Toggle down all of the layers. You can toggle off the actual supports a little bit so you can get a better look. So now we're going back into our support settings. I'm just going to shut off the larger view of the settings. And we still have the auto supports on. From here, what I would do is zoom in and just make sure that the program did not miss any of the little islands. So as you can see, it's starting to form the model. And so far, it looks like the auto supports are doing a good job. They're catching everything. So again, I would go through this slowly, and there's about 2,000 layers to go through. I would slowly go through this and see if it's missing anything. Anytime a new little blue speck pops up anywhere on the model, make sure that the program added a support to it. So you can alternate this in different views to make sure it's catching everything. And so far, it looks like it does. For the most part, auto supports seem to work, but not all the time. I find usually it misses like 1 or 2 spots that I would add a support to myself. So what I do is I use the auto supports, but I also go in and check. And then if I feel like an area needs an extra support or 2, or I see that the program missed something, I will manually go in and just add another 1 or 2. So the auto supports will save you a lot of time, but you still need to do the work and go in and make sure it didn't miss anything. Trust me, it's worth the time to sit there and check the file than it is to try to clean up your printer when it doesn't print correctly. All right, so once all the supports are done, let me zoom back out. This is how your file would look. We can flip her back around now. You can make sure she's on the build plate correctly. If it's off of the build plate, it will actually light up. So let me just go back to the move tool here. So if she goes off, all these red areas means she's not on the build plate and it's not going to print correctly. So anytime you see something like that, you want to position your model so that it's properly within the range of the build plate. This way it prints correctly. And then from here off to the right, you're going to see a setting for a slice. Before we get to that, let me just double check the print settings one more time because I want to go through that and explain that if I didn't so already. So you don't have to touch anything as far as the machine settings go up top. That's already done. It's set to the resolution. As far as the layer height, you want to keep that roughly where it is at 0.050. I see a lot of complaints in the community, people asking why there's layer lines on their prints. That's because this number is too high. They usually have it set to 1, and it's actually showing you an example of what's happening. When that number is too high, the layer width is too far apart, and you're going to see visible lines. So the lower you go with that, it's creating more layers, which is going to take more time and more hours to print, but you're going to have a smoother print. The bottom layer count, I would actually raise that up to about between 5 and 10. That's basically the layers that are going to stick to the build plate, which is important because those are going to be the strongest layers. If those bottom layers aren't that strong, the whole entire thing is going to fail. Nothing is going to stick to the build plate. The exposure time, this is the regular exposure time for each layer. You can experiment with that. Again, try to stick to the recommended settings for your specific resin. In this case, we're using the ELEGOO ABS 3.0. And let me just show you, because if you do go to the website, ELEGOO's website, they give you recommended settings for the resin. So here's one I pulled up. So they're showing you bottom exposure 25 to 30, normal exposure 2.8 to roughly 3.2, which is correct. Here's the layer height that we just looked at, 0.5 I should say. And then the lifting distance, how far down that build plate is lifting and how quickly it's moving each time. So they're giving you the recommended settings for that. The most important is really going to be the normal exposure time and the bottom exposure time. So let me go back to the program. So the bottom exposure time, and they're actually showing you right here, those are the first few layers that stick to your metal build plate, and like I said, are the most important. So those first few layers are going to be extremely overexposed because it's going to make it stick to the build plate. So normally you want that, again, it's going to depend on the resin, but roughly between 20 to 35. For this resin, I believe it said it was 30, so you can just change these numbers to your specific resin. For mine, it was 30. The layer count, that's the transition layer when it's going to start going from bottom to regular layers, excuse me, when it switches the exposure time. So it's going to go from 30 to 2.5. 2.5 is a little bit low. So if we go back to our recommended settings, the recommended settings are 2.8 to 3.2 for gray. And again, this is going to be for the ABS-like resin 3.0. Again, you can go through all different resins and it gives you different settings for all different resins, different colors. We're using gray. So they're recommending 2.8 to 3.2. So going back to the program, I would usually keep this at about 3. So the normal exposure time we're going to set to 3. And then everything else looks okay. Like I said, usually it's just really the bottom exposure that you're messing with and the regular exposure for the rest of the layers throughout the print. And then off to the right, this whole section here is just controlling, again, how quickly the machine is moving up and down. Like I said, you don't want it to go too fast. And what's great about this program is they're actually showing you examples of explaining what each option does. So that's what that's doing. You can copy my settings here if you want to screenshot it, or you can head on over to ELEGOO's website, or even better, head on over to the Facebook communities for ELEGOO. There's tons of community members always willing to help out. They'll give you recommended settings for your printer as well as your resin. But yeah, hit apply when you want to apply everything. And then once we're ready to save the file, you're going to hit slice. That's kind of formatting everything into one file. This way the printer knows what to do. Now the printer has all of those settings. So again, depending on your computer, how quick it is, it could take up to a minute to slice this all together. So we'll just give this a few seconds to slice. Once it's sliced, we can save it to our USB drive. I now have, if you could see it on screen, my other USB drive. Like I said, I always recommend getting a better one. And we're going to save this file to our USB drive. And once it's saved to our USB drive, we can, leave the computer or laptop and head back to the printer, plug it in, and hit the print button. And now the printer knows what to do. So let's just let this go. It's up to 70%. Still slicing. Again, it's going to depend on the model, how big the model is, how many supports are on there, how quick your computer is. You do need a pretty graphic heavy computer because it does use a lot of graphics for 3D programming. All right, it's done. Then once it's done, you're going to head on over to the right, hit the save button. You can name it. I'm going to name this Hawk Girl head and the word print, just so that I know it's ready to print. And it's showing you would obviously choose choose your USB drive, and it's saving it as a Chitubox slicer CTB. There's all different options. The CTB is the one that you want, and you're going to hit save. And like I said, once it's saved, take your little USB stick, and we're going to head back to the printer. Okay, let's go. Okay, from here, you would pour in your resin into the tray or a vat. And again, we're using the ELEGOO ABS-like 3.0 photopolymer resin in gray. And we would take the USB drive that we just grabbed from our computer or laptop that we loaded the file onto, plug it into the printer. From here, you can now come back to your display. You're going to hit the print button and find your file. There's only one file on that USB drive, and it's right there. Actually shows you a nice picture as well as the name of the file. So Hawk Girl head print. We're going to select that file. It's all touchscreen, showing you a larger version of it. And from there, you're just going to hit the play button, which is basically your print button, and it's calculating everything and doing its thing. So from there, we're going to allow the printer to print, and in the meantime, we'll take a look at the wash and cure station and go through all of that. Okay, for the ELEGOO wash and cure machine, this is the Mercury X bundle. This is everything that comes out of the box. It's actually two separate bases. You have one base for the actual washing machine. Actually, no, this is going to be your curing machine, and then to the right is the base for the wash machine. You have this bucket here, which is going to hold your detergent. It just goes right on top magnetically. And we'll take a look at that in a minute with the actual detergent inside. The UV lights, it comes with two UV lights. It gives you directions on which side they should be. So the UV lights themselves, they do have to get plugged in. It doesn't come all assembled, but it just looks like it just clips right in, no big deal. It comes with a power supply, and it has a split. So you can actually power both machines with only one plug, which is really great. You have a Ziploc bag with some Allen key and other little screws in there. I'm not sure what that is for yet. It might just be extras. And we have our instruction booklet. Again, it's the ELEGOO Mercury X bundle. And then we have our UV protective shield, which will sit on top of the machine like that to protect any UV light from hitting your resin model. So let me get this all set up, and then we'll take a further look. Okay, once everything was all assembled, here's how it looks all set up. Off to the left, we have the curing station with the UV light enclosure. We have two UV lights as well as a spinning turntable. And then off to the right, we have the wash station. It's a snap closure lid. Everything is inside of a plastic container, but the actual inside is a metal basket. This way you can put your parts inside and not have to worry about them getting sucked into the spinning motor down below. So really cool, pretty basic setup for any wash and cure station. So we'll take a look further into that in a minute. We also have the ELEGOO Photopolymer Resin Detergent. If you didn't want to use isopropyl alcohol, ELEGOO sent me this detergent to try out, which is supposed to be somewhat better than trying to actually use isopropyl alcohol. The only concern I had with the detergent was with isopropyl alcohol, you can actually recycle and reuse it over and over again. So I did reach out to ELEGOO and ask, can you do the same with the detergent? And they did confirm yes. The same you would with the isopropyl alcohol. You can reuse the detergent and recycle it, and you have to just filter out any of like the dirty resin, because when you're 3D printing, after the model comes off of the build plate, it is still covered in liquid resin, and you need to clean all of that off first. So I'm going to show an example how to quickly clean it before throwing it into the wash station, and then I will show an example of how to set up the actual curing time. But just to take a look at the actual machines themselves, it's a push button. You hold it down, you get a little beep, and you have a digital countdown timer that you can set for how long you want it to wash. And then the same thing with the curing station. You just hold it down. You're going to get a beep, and then same thing. It's a digital countdown where you can adjust the time. It goes from anywhere from 30 seconds to 30 minutes, which is way too much. You usually just need like 3 to 5 minutes, but we'll take a look at that in a minute. So let me get this all set up with the detergent, and we'll take a look at an actual model inside the curing station. Okay, so once your model is finished printing, and here's that model that we were looking at on the computer that was printed out. This was the Hawk Girl from DC Comics with, you know, the portrait with the hair going all over the place. So straight off the printer, your model is going to be covered in resin. Again, make sure you're wearing gloves. But one tip I recommend is get a spray bottle, either filled with the resin detergent, or if you want to decide to use isopropyl alcohol. You could use isopropyl alcohol, although I do like the detergent. It doesn't have such a strong chemical smell as isopropyl alcohol, so take that in consideration. The detergent itself actually has a less odorous smell. But basically, once the model is off the printer and covered in resin, just basically spray it down to get off any loose residue as much as possible. This way you're not fully polluting the entire bucket full of your cleaning solution, which will quickly let it go to waste quicker. Once the model is sprayed down and you got most of the resin off, you can place it inside of the bucket. We have the cleaning solution inside. Just let it sink down. It should have a drain hole for the model. If you put drain holes, or if it's solid, it might float a little bit depending on how heavy the actual model is. But let's see if I can get her down a little bit further. Okay. And once she is down below into the bucket, you can set your time. I'm just going to do a quick 30 seconds just for the demonstration. Let's see. I have to turn it on and off because I just tested it before the video. Okay. So let's do 30 seconds and I'll show you what the inside looks like. So it's starting up and there it goes. So it basically spins around like a tornado effect, which is really great. I also noticed that it gives like a little bit of a pulsating action. It'll stop in a few seconds and then switch right there, and then it kicks on again. So what's really great about these machines is it really takes all the resin off of the model on the outside, but especially on the inside, which is kind of tricky to do if you were just trying to do this by hand with a brush. So I definitely recommend the cleaning solution with the actual machine. So once it's finished, you do get a warning that it's all finished. So let's get her out of the washing machine and then we'll set her to cure. All right, so here's a look at the model on the curing station without the cover. Just keep in mind for protection that the machine will not work unless the cover is on. So I'm going to get the yellow cover placed over this and then we'll set up the timer. All right, and once the enclosure is placed back over onto the actual base, you have a nice yellow design to block out any UV light. You can set the timer. Usually for parts, I like to cure them roughly 3 to 4 minutes. For the sake of the video, which is going to do 30 seconds, it was already set. So to start the machine, you're just going to press the button and the UV lights kick on automatically. And she is on a rotable turntable, which will automatically spin to make sure that she's being hit by UV light in all directions. There's also a UV light source from the bottom as well. This way it's getting into all the areas, not just from the top and the sides, but as well as below. So she's just going to spin around. As far as the machines go, yes, you can just pick up a UV light by itself, or even like a UV flashlight. Maybe not a UV flashlight, that might not be strong enough, but it is definitely cheaper to get a UV light by itself and just a bucket full of cleaning solution by itself. But I definitely recommend the machines. Anyone I know from the community that picked up a 3D printer without picking up the wash and cure station always goes back and ends up buying the wash and cure station, just because it's just easier. The fact that it actually spins around and hits it from every angle with the UV light, it spins on the turntable, and the machine itself for washing has a nice spin cycle to really clean the model. It's a lot more cost effective in the end run to do it this way. So I definitely recommend picking up the two machines if you are going to get into 3D printing. So yeah, once she's finished curing, she's safe to the touch at this point. She is safe to pick up without any gloves on. You don't have to worry about any harmful hazardous resin chemicals anymore. The model is fully cured and safe to do whatever you wish to do with the model. From here, if you're going to go paint it or just to go assemble it, that's up to you. But from here on out, your model's all set to go and everything has been cured. Okay, so again, if you're looking to get into 3D printing, specifically resin 3D printing, I can't recommend ELEGOO more enough. In terms of the printer itself, you're getting a great printer at an affordable price. The quality, you're getting 12K resolution for incredible sculpts and details. And then again, it always comes back to the customer service. They have great customer service as well as great feedback. Also, I recommend always picking up the bundle with the wash and cure station, because trust me, in the end run, you'll end up wanting it and needing it, because it just makes life a lot easier, and it's better to pick it up as a bundle with the printer because you end up saving money that way. So my personal recommendation, and when I always get asked which 3D printer should I buy, it's always going to be the ELEGOO Saturn. In this case, we have the ELEGOO Saturn 3 right here. It's just a fantastic printer at an affordable price. If you are interested in this printer, as well as the wash and cure station bundle, I'm going to leave an Amazon link in the video description. Just go by the video title, by the more button, you'll see all the info to where you can purchase this printer and cure station at a discount over on Amazon. I'll also leave the info on the screen down below where you can purchase it on Amazon at a discount. Also, speaking of discounts, these two machines right here, if you are interested in these two machines, I was thinking about doing some type of giveaway in the form of a raffle, maybe somewhere between 30 to 40 people at $10 a person. I'll do another video going more in depth into the details of that, but just for the time being, I'm trying to get some feedback as to who might be interested. So if you're interested in doing some type of raffle to where you can win these two machines for roughly $10 with free shipping within the US, leave a comment down below. This way I can get some early feedback, and then I'll set that up for the next video, and we'll do some type of raffle for the community. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Take care.